Greetings, Fright Nights. I'm Count Jackula,
And I'm the Horror Guru.
and we just saw Southbound.
That's right, Southbound, which is essentially the new anthology horror film by a bunch of people that worked on VHS. The gimmick of this one is that it is an anthology film all set on a haunted road of some kind. Like everything's set around this one road, and just shit just keeps getting real with a bunch of characters. And unfortunately, we're a little disappointed by this movie.
Yeah. It's a little
Yeah,
middling. The best way to describe it is that every segment has something great,
yeah.
and almost every segment also has something disappointing.
Yeah. And it's really hard to get into without getting into spoilers, but we're going to do our best to talk about it first. So for the people who don't want spoilers, you will probably really love all the ideas in this movie.
Yeah, all the ideas are great.
You will probably even love some of the individual segments. In particular, there's one that we really love,
Yeah.
which is the one by the guy who did Amateur Night, which is that segment's
Yeah,
fantastic.
yeah, yeah. You take that out of the movie, it's a perfect short film.
Absolutely. But most of the segments don't come to satisfactory conclusions, and you're kind of hoping that the movie overall is going to conclude them better,
Yeah.
and it just leaves you with more unanswered, unsatisfactory questions.
Yeah, it tries to do the Pulp Fiction trick or treat thing,
Yeah.
but the problem is it doesn't do so as satisfyingly.
Not at all. And part of the problem is it's okay if you leave your movie on a question or two. Inception's a good example. It
Yeah.
leaves on that question: is it a dream at the end? Is it not a dream? Does it even matter? You know, that question happens at the end of Inception. Pan's Labyrinth,
Yeah.
which ends on that question of: is she really in fantasy world, or is it all a dream? Does it even matter? Once again. Um, and those are great. Like when a movie's able to grip you from start to finish and then leave you with one question that you can discuss afterwards, that's fine. But this movie leaves way too many questions left unanswered, including like straight up character motivations for your main characters at
Yeah,
times.
like the big question that you have of why are they doing this is
Mhm,
left very ambiguous
mhm.
to the point where you're like, this is a lot of trouble to go for something we don't ever get to find out.
Absolutely. And the thing is that you can, like, if you think about it, you can piece together some possible scenarios of what's going on. But the problem is that it's not satisfying. Like some movies, it's satisfying to piece together what's going on, but in this movie, you're really unsatisfied no matter what conclusion you come to.
Yeah, pretty much.
But almost all the segments like start off awesome, lead into something interesting, but then just kind of
Yeah, yeah,
there was two segments I really liked. One of them was the middle one, which is the one by the guy who did Amateur Night.
yeah.
And the other one is the one right before the last wraparound one. But even that one feels like a segment in a series we didn't see. Like
Yes. Like that felt like part of a television show
yeah.
that in another episode we would have come back to, but it's not an episode, it's an
Yeah,
anthology movie.
absolutely.
So
And other
what?
I'm a huge fan of anthology films, Creep Show, Trick or Treat, Tales of Halloween last
Yeah.
year. And the thing that all of those things have in common is that they all have these nice, awesome contained stories, and they might connect in some way. In Tales of Halloween, they all take place in one town on the same Halloween, much like Trick or Treat, and so there's a little bit of cross pollination there. But they all come to like they're all complete stories.
Yeah, one that was a little less successful but had an amazing ending was Christmas Horror Story.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that one, even then, like even though those ones had a problem with a lot of the stories being very unsatisfactory, but they at least had complete stories most of the time in that
Yeah, they
one.
were complete, and the main wraparound segment was amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Whereas in this one, in my opinion, the wraparound is the worst one,
It's really weak. Yeah.
mainly because the first half of the wraparound is solid and awesome and gets you hooked into the rest of the movie. And then the last part of the wraparound, it doesn't live up to that. It really doesn't.
No, it doesn't. Do we want to get into spoilers at this point?
Yeah, let's get into
All
spoilers.
right, spoilers. All right. So the whole premise of this anthology is that it is a bunch of people literally on the road to hell.
Absolutely. It is a highway to hell.
Yep.
Which is pretty cool, pretty
Way to
awesome.
hell.
Like the opening segment starts off with these two guys who obviously just got done murdering someone. Like
Yeah.
they never explicitly say it in the first half, but you get an idea that that happens. They're covered in blood. They're on the run like something just went down, and they keep saying like we did it for so and so, which is like a girl's name,
Yeah, like a little girl.
and you're
Yeah.
not entirely sure what they mean by that at first, but it you kind of get the impression that it's one of the characters' daughter. But it isn't until like the second half that they really confirm that. But
Yeah, and even then they don't confirm it very well.
no, they don't. But they show up at this diner. They go inside the diner. All the diner's people are just very quiet and just kind of about their business and almost like pretending they're not even there.
Yeah.
One of them goes in the bathroom and gets assaulted by an invisible thing
Yeah.
who tries to choke them. And the other one is while talking with the what do you call them? The person who greets you at the door of a diner of like a restaurant or something. The maitre d' or something like that.
Well, like for a diner like that, it's essentially the
Yeah,
waitress.
well, yeah, she's essentially a waitress. But she talks to her, and then all of a sudden there's an earthquake, and the diner people don't even seem to notice that there was an earthquake at
Yeah.
all. And he's like, "Is anyone gonna
Anyone gonna say anything?
No.
No? All right, we're just getting out of here.
Yeah. So they go and leave. They get on the road. They drive down the road, and then coming up in front of them is the diner again. And they're like, "What the fuck?" And so they go back around. They come back around. The girl standing outside this time, smoking a cigarette, says something to them, and then they just go back around. And they come back around, and they realize they're in a loop. And this entire time, in the background of the shots, you see this weird floating figure that looks kind of skeletal almost that is looming in the background, and every time they come back, it is getting closer, and there are more of them each time.
Yeah. They're like little
Uh,
grim
yeah,
reapers.
and you can tell that at least one character for the first segment, for like the first part of it, is acknowledging it, and you're not quite sure if the other one is yet until one of them stops and says, "No, I'm gonna go confront them," and the other one's like, "No, what are you doing? Like this is crazy," and then they get this whole vague argument. It was one of those things where you don't want the audience to know what's happening yet, so you have the characters be overly vague about what they're talking
Yeah.
about. And meanwhile, while they're arguing, one of the ghostly fucking floating skeletal creatures, which look awesome, they're like these
Yeah,
Grim
yeah.
Reaper fucking things with
Yeah, the
these.
effects of the movie are actually really good.
Yeah. They're digital, but they look good. And one of them floats over and just like shoves its fist into the one guy's throat, the one who keeps like trying to convince his friend not to go up to them,
Yeah.
and then leads the other guy to what looks like some sort of like motel or something like that. He goes inside the motel and there's just blood and like this is obviously like a crime scene. And you kind of get the impression this is the crime scene they came from. This sequence here, this whole going on is probably the most unsettling sequence in the movie is him going through this thing with this ghostly figure like luring him to one thing or another. And then he runs into this girl inside this house because the motel room turns into a house for some reason. It's
Yeah.
really
If y'all played the PT Silent Hills
Oh yeah.
fucking
Actually,
demo, it does
that's what
that.
it feels like.
Yeah,
Actually,
yeah.
yeah.
You walk out the front door and you're walking back in.
Yeah, absolutely. And he sees this little girl, and it's obviously the little girl they were talking about. They don't say it, but this much is clear that it's the
Yeah.
little girl they were talking about. So you're like, okay, it's obviously his daughter or his sister or something like that. He starts chasing her, and she chases her, and then runs past a door, which leads into the second segment,
Yep.
which is a group of girls who are in a band. It's a three-girl band. Who are leaving the hotel, get into a car, and then their car breaks down on the road,
Yep.
way far away from the hotel. And it's like, okay, well, what do we do now? So they have to flag down a car just to figure out where the nearest town is, where they can get a mechanic, where they can get a spare tire, all that stuff. And it's this really happy-go-lucky, cheery, like uber like Southern American family that shows up. Like
Yeah, they're very 50s. They're like a
yeah,
50s
nuclear
family.
family is what they feel like.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Um,
Yeah. They feel like, like that creepy, like, kind of, like,
Yeah, it's like Leave It to
the
Beaver all of a sudden showed up.
yeah.
And it's like,
Mm,
sure, golly, we'll let you into the car or whatever. And like one of the girls is like, I don't think this is a good idea. And the other girls are like, yeah, but what choice do we have? It's
yeah.
it's either we stay out here in the fucking heat with no water or food, or we go to their place and maybe call a fucking mechanic. Like
Yeah.
you know,
Exactly.
so they get in the car, they go to the house, and then just weird shit starts happening. Like the Leave It to Beaver people just start acting just like stupidly ominous.
Yeah, yeah, they're like they offer them, like, mysterious food to eat
Yeah,
that you're
yeah.
like,
They started
"What
re
is
they
it?"
started reminding me of, like, the end of Rosemary's Baby, like the apartment complex, like, when they
Actually, what it really reminded me of was Parents.
Oh, Parents, that's a good one. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, Parents, that's a better example of what
"What are
they're
we
at going.
eating? Leftovers? Leftovers of what? Leftovers."
During this time, the girls are getting into various arguments about this whole thing, and through the arguments, you kind of learn that there was a fourth band member that left the band and we think died.
Yeah, we think died.
We're
We're
not sure.
not sure.
We're not sure how she died or why she died, but what we do know is that the other band members seem to blame the one band member for going off to sleep with some guy. So she wanted to sleep with this guy, so she went with that guy, and this led to the other band member leaving the band and then dying somehow. And I'm like, this feels like a really foggy backstory. Like
Yeah,
nothing's
yeah,
really
yeah.
clear here.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Because I'm
really,
not
really
entirely
bad.
sure why this, how much to blame this character actually is for her friend's death, and that's kind of important given that this entire segment is like her comeuppance.
Yeah. And the thing is you don't even necessarily feel like this girl did anything wrong.
No, no, she went and slept with some guy. I'm like, what was the situation? Was her friend dying and she just went to sleep with some guy instead? Like, what
Yeah, yeah.
happened?
Were they just in a fight over sleeping with this dude?
Yeah.
Like, that's not a big deal.
And maybe watching the movie a second time would make it more clear, but we were so unsatisfied with the first watching, I'm not sure I'm interested in watching it
Yeah,
again.
yeah. So that second segment's probably the worst.
Yeah, and so as it goes on, like, okay, so the family turns out to not only be cannibals, in fact, they feed them this really disgusting meat
Yeah.
that the one girl who the other girls blame for the death of their friend chooses not to eat because she's a vegan. Because that's the thing that happens in horror movies now.
Yeah.
There's always the vegan character who has to eat meat and it's uncomfortable. It works sometimes, but here it was just an excuse so that she doesn't eat the meat because the meat like possesses the other two girls when they eat it,
Yeah.
and they become part of the Leave It to Beaver family, which turns out to be a satanic cult. And they go outside and they start worshiping this fire and shit like that. And the girl follows them out. It's like, what the fuck is going on? Has more ghostly visions of her dead friend. Runs away from the cult, who chases her into the road where she gets hit by a car. And then we enter segment 3,
Which is the best
which
one.
is the best one. Okay, so this guy is driving down the road. He's obviously on his way home to meet his wife. We're not quite sure where he's coming from, but it was some sort of business thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He hits the girl from segment 2. Then he has this moment of choice where it's just like, well, do I fucking leave her or do I help her? And it's like, no, I gotta help her. So he calls 911 to try to figure out where the nearest hospital is, or to get an ambulance over if they can,
Right.
or police over or whatever. And so the person on the other line, on the dispatcher, leads him to a hospital in the nearest town where he carries the girl in, but the town is empty. It's a ghost town.
Yeah, no one's around.
No one's around, and the hospital is empty completely. So he's running through the hospital yelling for somebody while the person on the phone is saying, "Hey, we're in here. We're right in here. Where are you?" And he's got the girl in his hands. She's dying and she is all fucked up. It's got some of the best practical effects of the movie.
Yeah.
Like she is like contorted and fucked
Yeah,
up and
bones are
sticking
coming out of her
out.
fucking body.
Yeah, and
It's
she's constantly
gnarly.
convulsing, and he's like, "I'm just trying to help this girl. Where are you?"
And then they start instructing him on opening her up
Yeah.
and performing surgery.
And he's like, "I can't do that or whatever. If you don't do that, she's gonna die. Would you rather her die?" And he's like, "Okay, I'll do it." So he starts going through with it, and he has to like cut her open, and they ask him to like go in there and like drain her lungs. But in doing all this, he ends up killing her.
Yeah.
And then once he does that, the voice on the other line just starts laughing at him.
Yep.
And that's when you start hearing multiple voices on the other line. Like they're all layered together like a satanic voice. Like We Are Legion kind of
Yeah,
situation.
yeah.
You know, he's like, what do you fucking want with me? What did I do? I did the right thing. Why are you
Yeah.
punishing
I
me?
don't deserve to be here.
Yeah.
And then the voice goes, "You're right. You don't deserve to be here. You
Yeah.
don't belong." He's like, "Wait, I can just leave?" Yes.
Yes, you can.
Like, none of this ever happened? Like,
Yeah.
none of it ever happened.
So he goes to the
Goodbye.
locker. He finds a change of clothes because he's covered in blood at this point. He puts on the change of clothes, which is the exact match of clothes he had before.
Yeah.
New phone, so he can contact his wife because the phone gets damaged in this whole thing. Gets a pair of car keys, goes outside, and the car that he used to drive that was all smashed up is not the car he gets. He gets a second car that looks identical.
Yeah, that is identical to his old car.
Gets in the
It's all
car
fucked up.
and drives off. Now, before we get into the next segment, what's great about this is that is a complete story. Okay, you have this scenario where this guy gets in this fucked up situation, is tested, and then is proved to be worthy and allowed to live. Okay? And the stakes are clear. This guy is a pretty good guy. He just wants to get home to his wife. He accidentally hit a girl, and instead of leaving her, he saves her. So you know why hell the road lets him go.
Yeah.
Unlike some of these other characters. All right, now we get into the fourth one.
Yeah, the fourth one, which is weird because it's a good segment. The problem is it is also the least complete.
Yes. The fourth one begins with the man from the third segment drives off, and it's revealed that the person on the other line, who is all those voices, all those demonic voices on the other line, is this girl, is this old lady in this phone booth who hangs up the phone, kind of laughs, and then walks into this bar.
Yeah.
And it's very obvious that the people of this bar and the people of this town, there's something off about them.
Yeah, it's super off about him.
You know, like they love fucking with people, and that much is clear. And then all of a sudden, this dude bursts in, asking for his sister. Shoots one of them. One of them turns into this monster thing.
Yeah.
And he knocks him down and shoots off his claw. Grabs the old lady and demands that she show him where his sister is, that he's been looking for her for like 10 years or something like that.
Yeah.
And you're like, whoa, what's going on? Immediately you're kind of hooked. You're like, oh,
yeah, you're like, okay.
Oh shit, wait, okay. There's a monster town. Okay, there's a missing sister. Okay, this is interesting. Already it's getting going, and it's action packed. You know, he fucking fights a monster. That's pretty cool. Oh wait, he doesn't take the old lady, does he?
No, he takes the bartender.
Takes the bartender, that's right. He takes the bartender. Bartender leads him to this building that doesn't seem to have a door.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like an all-night diner, but he leads him to a wall without a door.
Yeah, in like an alleyway. And you notice that the bartender has these like weird little symbols on his hands, and he puts one up to his face, and it reveals an eye on his face, and with it he can see the door, which is pretty fucking cool. Like, this has like the coolest mythology of all the segments is this one, because you're like, oh, it's like a town of demons and monsters and miscreants. It's kind of like a little Nightbreed going on here.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool, except unlike Nightbreed, these people are just
They're
born
evil.
Yeah, they're just born to fuck with people.
Yeah, Nightbreed, it's like, we're misunderstood. Why are you fucking with us?
Absolutely.
Like, these people are just fucking evil.
Absolutely. And so this entire time, the bartender guy is basically just like, you have no idea what you're doing. You have no idea where you are, do you? You're fucked, kid. You're not gonna get out of here.
You came in here and
So-
now you're screwed.
So he drags the guy inside, and inside there's like a bunch of obviously townspeople who are all like tattooed up, like bikers and shit. But they're just kind of sitting there like nothing's happening, even though this guy with a gun is like fucking
dude with a fucking shotgun is coming
Yeah.
in. They're all just like, hey,
what's up? What's it going on? And he realizes quickly that it's a tattoo parlor.
Yep.
And it's a tattoo parlor. That's just any tattoo parlor. It's like demonic symbol tattoo parlor.
Yeah. It's like people are getting like magic symbols carved.
Yeah,
into their
which is
skin.
obvious where what's his name got his hand.
Yeah.
Got his eye hand. Obviously, it was from this tattoo parlor. And it turns out his sister is the tattoo artist. And he's like, "Hey, I've been looking for you for 10 years. We're gonna get you out of here." And she's like, "What are you talking about? I'm exactly where I want to be." And he's like, "No, you're not. You're being held hostage. I'm gonna save you." So he grabs her, and she's
Yeah.
like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Pulls her out. The other guy tries to attack her, and he blows his brains out, which is fucking awesome. And throws her in the car and then starts driving, and she's like, Where are you gonna fucking go? I'm where I belong. Like, you don't belong here. What are you doing?"
Yeah.
um and he's like, "I'm getting you the fuck out of here. Like, I've been looking for you for 10 years." And it's obvious that he has aged 10 years and she is not. um,
Yeah.
that much is obvious without them even showing it to us, because she's really young and he's almost like an old man
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And they have
now.
like this conversation while they're on the run where she's explaining that she deserves to be here.
Yeah.
And he's like, "No, no, it was an accident." She's like, "It wasn't an accident. I killed them."
It's not even that vague. Like, that's
Yeah.
that's the kind of vague that the first segment has. This
Yeah,
one's
yeah,
actually
yeah.
very specific. It's like, "Did you think our parents just died in that fire? I killed
Killed
them."
them. Yeah, like I did it. I did it
"I
on
did it. I
purpose.
killed them." And he's like, I don't believe that." And he's like, "Well, you better start believing." And then, like, the other demons start chasing after them in a car, and you hear like this howling in the distance. He's like, I'm fuck it, I'm getting out of here." And he pulls off the road. And it's at this point she starts freaking out. It's like, you can't do that. You don't realize this isn't a desert. This is
Yeah,
not
yeah,
a
that's not a
desert.
desert. You can't go out there.
And he's like, "Sure we can." It's like, "Not we. I can. You can't." Like, it's, eventually they start just driving into nothingness, like just
Yeah.
pure nothingness. And like, it's like they're going into hyperdrive, and like he's driving at full speed and she's freaking out, and he's like, "Ah!" And then finally he stops, having gotten nowhere.
Yeah.
And they have another exchange, and then these naked monstrous people burst through the window and pull him out.
Yeah. They rip his clothes off, and it's very obvious that these are all people who wandered out into this wasteland.
Yeah.
And the idea is like that's limbo.
Yeah,
You don't want to be in
absolutely.
limbo.
And the sister's basically just like, "I tried to tell you." And he's like, "What are you gonna do? You gonna leave me here or whatever?" I'm like, "Yeah." And then
Yeah, I
she just gets in the
gotta.
car and then drives right back into town. I think that's the end of that segment,
That's the
right?
end of that segment. Like she drives by the diner because it turns out it's the diner from the beginning of the
Yes.
movie.
Yes, that does happen, and that prompts the end segment, which turns out to be the wraparound segment, but you don't know that right away. But
Yeah.
before we get into that, like, this segment is probably the second best segment of the movie. Because it has a really cool mythology. It's really action packed and kind of fun, and it's not vaguing you the way the other
Yeah,
segments
yeah, yeah.
are.
This one's very, very pointed.
Yeah, it's very pointed, very specific, and you know what's going on at any given time, even if the main character doesn't understand the gravity of it.
Yeah.
Um,
The only real weirdness is how the previous segment dovetailed into this one.
which is a little weird.
Yeah, it was a little odd because you were like, it's like, wait, it's an old woman demon at a payphone?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I guess.
Yeah. I was willing to roll with that. It's kind of ridiculous,
Well,
but
it's like, well, the funny thing is by the time we spend a few minutes with that old lady demon, and she
yeah.
feels like a completely different character.
Yeah, that's very true. She does not seem like the person that was on the other line,
Yeah.
at all. Or any of the voices that were on the other line.
Yeah, and it was like, yeah, I guess they're Legion, but I don't
I don't
know.
know. Yeah. Well, that's the other problem, is that the movie overall seems to establish these kind of rules, but it doesn't feel like it follows those rules entirely. So
Yeah.
you're kind of left wondering, what are the rules of this road, like. And that's kind of, it's to give a good comparison. In Trick or Treat, the rules of Trick or Treat and what Sam, approves of, is very clear throughout that
Yeah,
movie.
yeah, he's extremely consistent. Don't blow out a pumpkin before night's over.
Hmm.
Like, don't fucking mess with the old powers. They'll
Yes,
fucking kill ya.
absolutely.
And if you give him a treat, he's obligated to just pass you
Yeah.
by.
Basically, just follow the rules of Halloween and you will survive. But know that if you are a monster yourself, you might find a worse monster.
Yeah.
And in that movie, it's very clear. But in this movie, I don't entirely feel it was that clear, or when it was clear, the next segment would break it.
Yeah, that was a big problem.
And I just it's very obvious before we get into the last segment that all these segments were written separately and done by separate people.
Yeah.
Um which makes it really frustrating because the reason why Creepshow feels so good and coherent is because every segment was written and directed by the same person.
Yeah, yeah. It was
Well,
Stephen King, George Romero.
exactly.
Yeah.
Same thing with Trick or Treat. On the other hand, Tales from Halloween is all a bunch of individual segments that are done by individual people, but they aren't as tied together the way they are in this.
Yeah, yeah. It would be like this is like if all the different stories of Pulp Fiction were done by different people.
Yes, yes, and as a result, the rules keep changing.
Yeah, and that's a huge problem because it links like Pulp Fiction. You're like,
Yes,
whoa, if you're gonna link this like Pulp Fiction or Trick or Treat,
yeah.
these all have to be super
Well,
consistent.
absolutely. Like the first segment links by passing by the hotel room that leads into the second segment. The girl in the second segment is the body that the man is trying to save in the third segment, and the old lady in the fourth segment is on the call with the guy in the third segment, and the fifth segment, which turns out to be the wraparound, is obviously tied with the first segment.
Yeah, yeah, and
And,
now,
and in all these segments, the looming skeletal figure thing is there, the kind of
yeah,
in the same way that
that Sam is.
that
Yeah.
Sam is. But now we're gonna have to go into that last
Now we
segment.
got to go into the last segment. Okay, now here's the thing that is the ultimate tragedy of this movie, which is every segment has something great in it,
Hmm.
but over half the segments also have a critical awful flaw. And problem is that the one with the worst flaw is the one that connects all of them.
Hmm.
And that's a problem, and that's the last, aka the first segment.
Yes. All right. So the last segment happens. She passes by the diner, and in the diner are this mother and father and their daughter. And their daughter is obviously getting ready to go off to college or something like that. At least
Yeah.
that's what their vague talking sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's not entirely spelled out, but based on the way they're talking, that's what you assume.
Yeah.
Which is once again, the wraparound has a problem where everyone vague talks, and it's really
Yeah.
irritating. Um,
They all talk about one thing that could be one thing, but is not quite another.
yeah, yeah, and they're never clear on whether or not which one it is, even in
Nope.
the end. So, the family goes back to their house, and then a very mini version of You're Next basically happens.
Yep.
Some home invaders show up in kind of cheap masks that kind of look like the masks from You're Next. Some good tension building. It starts carrying out like a creepy slasher home invasion movie. And I'm like, oh, this seems kind of tame for this
Yeah,
movie.
yeah.
It's not bad, but it seems kind of tame. And then it becomes very clear, and I kind of figured this out really early on, about the time they arrived at their house, what was going on.
Yeah, yeah, me too.
Okay, it turns out that the home invaders are the two guys from the first segment. And the people that they killed are the mother and father and daughter that are in this house. Now, here's where things get a little frustrating. It becomes very obvious when they reveal their faces and they get the family tied up all stranger style, and he pulls out the picture of the girl that he was chasing in the first one, that he chases at the end of the first one, and shows it to him. And then the other guy whispers something into the wife's ear, and she's like, "You did what?" And you're like, "Okay, did he rape her? Did he kill her? Did
Yeah.
he kidnap her? Is the other girl the other guy's kid?" Like, there's all
Yeah,
these
yeah, all these possibilities and they don't tell you which one it is.
and you're left just like, okay, so which one is it? You're gonna make that clear, right? Nope. It
Yeah.
does not make that clear because he immediately kills the wife, which once again, in terms of because they're not clear of what the father did to what we're gonna assume is his daughter, because it's a young girl in the picture, probably not his sister, probably his
Yeah,
daughter.
most likely daughter, yeah.
Because they're not clear about what the father did, you're not entirely sure what the main character of this segment's motivation actually is.
Yeah, and it creates a problem because you can guess, but the problem is if you have to guess, then you realize you don't understand how this all hangs together.
Absolutely. And so, like, the wife, who is, like, obviously shocked and appalled by whatever they whispered into her ear, then gets killed by the other guy that's
Which
with
yeah, which
them.
you're just like, wait,
Wait, why are you
what?
killing her? What did she do? Like,
Yeah,
is this to get back at him through her? Because,
if that was true, that wouldn't clear at all.
like, the other thing is he doesn't seem like the kind of guy who would do that. Like, he would just kill the father. Like,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, that he didn't seem like the
it's
same
so like,
character.
this character is so not well written. It's just they vague their way around good character development, and it's fucking annoying.
Yeah,
But the way she's killed is they shove this fucking like towel in her throat and chokes her to death, which was the weirdest way to kill someone.
yeah, yeah.
Because
Especially
I'm
since they
sitting there,
had like fucking guns and
well, yeah,
shit,
because I'm
you
sitting
know.
there the entire time. It's like, why isn't she just biting down and not letting them shove that in? This
Yeah,
seems like a really ineffective way to kill someone.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
one thing I'll give the movie credit for is it does call back to the way that character who kills her dies when
yeah.
the
When the
Reaper
demon
shoves a
fucking does
fist through
that.
her throat, and there's actually a lot of little cool callbacks like that throughout the movie. In the bar that the old lady goes into to meet up with the bartender, and when in the fourth segment, there's actually a poster on the wall. Oh, wait, was it the bar or the
Yeah, it
tattoo
was the
parlor?
bar. It
It
was
was
the
either
bar.
the bar or the tattoo parlor, but okay.
I'm pretty
One
sure
of-
it's the
one
bar.
of them has the poster for the band from the second segment. So there's a lot of little cool things like tying things together and Easter eggs. It's just too bad that so many of these segments are unsatisfying.
Yeah,
So you're like, all right, and then he lets the daughter go, and that was when I was like, oh, is she the little girl? Like did they kidnap the daughter and that's why you killed both of them? Because that would make sense.
yeah.
But then again, well, but if
Then how
that's
would the wife not have known
yeah,
that?
yeah,
You
but then
know?
how would the wife not have known that? Because she's the one who would give birth to her. It's like okay, all right. Well, maybe he just raped his daughter and killed her, but this is out of nowhere. Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
And then that girl gets killed.
yeah, yeah, and then that girl attacks and injures the third friend of theirs that is assault, because apparently they entered this venture with three guys, which I think they actually mention in the first
Yeah,
segment
I think they did.
that
Yeah.
they lost a friend or something like that. And so she injures the third one, the nameless one, who you never really see his face because he never takes his mask off. And then the main guy stabs her, and when he stabs her, it's a little confusing because I've read some people read it as that is his daughter and he accidentally stabs her, but that doesn't come across at all.
No,
Because to
no.
me, it just felt like he just straight up just fucking killed her. It's like, all
Yeah,
right,
yeah, yeah.
whatever.
I don't think that was supposed to be his daughter. Like, I think it was just there's just a girl there, and
Yeah,
the guy
yeah,
just stabs her. You know,
yeah,
because she does like come out of nowhere and fucking attack them.
absolutely.
You know, after they had let her go.
And here's where the moment where the whole movie kind of shits the bed for
Yeah,
me,
yeah,
because it's the moment where I just checked out. So it turns out those creepy Reaper spirits that have been popping up throughout the movie, and especially in the first segment, they're the family.
yeah,
Like, the dead bodies of the families just burst open, and these like Reaper spirits burst out.
yeah. Now you're like, that didn't
Okay,
happen to anyone else in the movie who died. What the
and you're
fuck's
like,
going on?
okay, so I guess these people were living on the road. So were they just Reapers this whole time? Was that what they meant? Was it not college they were referring to? Was it her ascension into Reaperdom? But then why were they human?
Yeah.
And then you're like,
And
okay.
and that even brings up the bigger question of like, well, then what did he do to their daughter, and why would the wife be shocked if they're all monsters?
Yeah, yeah. You're like, okay, so maybe they just were reborn as spirits of vengeance in that moment, but that was just like
But
as
why?
yeah, well, it's one of those weird things. Like I
Like I said, it doesn't happen to anybody else.
it would be one thing if you somehow tied it in with the cult and made it be that this was like the final part of their ritual was like
Oh,
some
that
sort of
that'd have been pretty
sacrifice,
good.
but nothing like
Yeah.
that happens. So you're just kind of left like, well, that happened. Okay. And at that point, for no apparent reason, the fucking ground opens up and like a Cthulhu monster takes their third friend and just devours
Yeah,
them.
yeah, which looked great, by the
It
way.
looks great. It was awesome. It was creepy, but I'm sitting there going, why is any of this happening?
Yeah, yeah, but and
Which I shouldn't be doing.
yeah, like it's very obvious this was done by the guys who did the last segment of the original VHS
Oh, absolutely.
because it does have a shit hits the fan moment
Oh,
and then
absolutely.
craziness, which is what those guys are really good at. The
It
problem
really
is
worked in VHS.
it did.
It doesn't
Didn't
work
work
very well
here.
here.
It
No.
did not because they needed to actually like create a cohesive story. And the problem is that this story is not cohesive by itself,
Not at
let
all.
alone with any of the others.
Not at all. And so they drive off, and then it becomes the start of the first segment, and that's the end with a slight variation. Oh, that's another cool thing about this movie that we forgot to mention. The entire movie has this narration basically by this disc jockey that's played by Larry Fessenden, and it's one of my
Yeah.
favorite parts of the
Oh
movie.
yeah, yeah, yeah. His stuff is great.
Where he sets up the whole mood of the road and just like, all right, my ghouls and goblins, tonight we're going to be talking about the undead or something like that. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
really
yeah.
cool. It's
As you
really
walk
awesome.
down that long, dark, lonely
Yeah, yeah, one of
road,
those. Yeah, and just sets the whole mood for the movie. And he has a slight variation of the one he did at the beginning, which leaves you with this question of like, oh, is the whole movie cyclical? Like, does this all start over again? Is this just something that keeps repeating itself? Maybe, because in the movie, on the TV screen at one point, they're showing Carnival Souls.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Which the whole thing about that is the original. The main character has been dead the whole time movie.
yes, yes, which would maybe throughout this entire movie, everyone's already been dead, and so their hell is reliving this thing over and over again, which could be true. That would explain some of the weird shit that happens, but
The movie does not make that very clear if that's
no,
the case.
no. It feels like the movie kind of cops out on actually having an ending or an answer most of the time.
Yeah, yeah.
So that is essentially the movie Southbound, and it really breaks my heart to say I was disappointed by it, and that I think it's just kind of okay because there's so much awesome shit in here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The movie. The problem is as good as the heights the movie gets, also is completely reflected in the lows that it gets,
Hmm.
and it's a really, really, really big problem because it makes the movie very, very hard to praise and recommend for the good bits because you know that there's this bullshit
Yep.
that's gonna happen, and you're like, oh man, really? Like, I have a hard time recommending a movie that I don't feel is a satisfying experience.
Hmm.
And I feel like Southbound is not a satisfying experience despite
Yeah.
the heights that it reaches.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it really isn't. That's ultimately the problem because on the plus side, it is a movie that I thought a lot about after watching. But the problem is that no answer I could come up with to some of the questions it leaves open were satisfactory. And
Yeah, every theory we came up with was directly contradicted by something that actually happened in the movie.
yeah, yeah, that's the other problem is that because the movie doesn't feel like it's following its own rules when it sets it up. Um,
Yeah, like fucking like it's very obvious. Like the difference between this and a David Lynch film, very obvious. Like
mm.
Lynch knows what the rules of Lynchland are.
Well, yeah, yeah, and that's all that you need. If you know that the filmmaker knows the rules, even if you don't quite understand it, that can work. Like Lynch makes that fucking awesome.
Yeah, whereas in
Um,
this one, no, it doesn't really fucking give you what you're looking for.
no, no, but like the atmosphere is really cool. The idea of the
Yeah,
Hell Road is really awesome. Each
the
segment,
third segment is great.
the third segment is fucking fantastic. The fourth segment is fun. It feels like a small section of like a television series, but it's fun.
Yeah,
The voiceovers that tie all the segments together are really cool. I guess there's not much more to talk about unless there's something you
no,
wanted to bring up.
no, no. I give this thing a really, really super lukewarm.
Yeah.
You know,
If you like anthology films, obviously check it out because it's another anthology film. But I'm going to warn you right now, it's not Trick or Treat.
it's very
It's
disappointing.
not
Yeah.
Creep Show. It's not even Tales of Halloween. It's one of the middling ones that might be remembered for its awesome gimmick, but will probably not be talked about in the same breath as the classics.
No. Yeah, fuck you.